so you can feel free to request a recording or share with family, friends, or colleagues after the event. Welcome to our 5th annual New Year Wellness Series, backed by popular demand and packed with meaningful guidance on spiritual, relational, emotional, nutritional, physical, and mental wellness. I'm Sarah Green, the wellness consultant at the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at FAU Medicine. Integrative health is a holistic, patient-focused approach to healthcare and wellness. At the Marcus Institute, our physicians treat the whole person by examining everything that makes up a patient's health, including factors that can lead to disease, affect nutrition, exercise, and stress. Ultimately, patients and physicians are partners in healing and wellness. The Marcus Institute is pleased to co-sponsor this series with our friends at the Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement. We're posting links in the chat now and invite you to learn more about the Marcus Institute and Robin Rubin Center and make plans to join us again in the near future. Today's speaker is Tammy Fogarty, registered dietitian and founder of About Time Nutrition, dedicated to helping women 40 plus feel strong, energized, and deeply connected to their health. With more than 2 decades of experience, she combines integrative nutrition with practical lifestyle coaching to support women through perimenopause, menopause, and midlife transitions. She is the author of Limitless Health, a book focused on rebuilding confidence and creating sustainable habits. Tammy's mission is to empower women to thrive, not just survive through midlife. Dr. Fogarty is adjunct professor for nutrition science at FAU's Christine E. Lynn College of Nursing and will be co-facilitating the upcoming menopause education series titled Nourish the Change at Marcus Institute of Integrative Health. Please help me welcome Dr. Tammy Fogarty.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me and for joining me today. I am going to share my screen so we can go ahead and dive into this topic. It's something I am so passionate about. Give me just a moment here. Let me get this going. Okay. And then I'm pretty sure you guys can see my screen. So today we're going to talk about building goals that move you forward. So for most of us in the health and wellness space, we know that in January, people start to establish health goals. So we all know what we need to do, but the gap isn't the knowledge, the gap is alignment. So today I want to show you how aligning your health, your habits, and nutrition changes everything. All right, so let's start with something familiar. Most people set goals with good intentions. Maybe it's January, maybe it's after a health scare or a stressful season of life. And at first, motivation is really high. So life eventually happens and it hits us sometimes really hard. Schedules get busy, energy drops, consistency slips, and suddenly that goal feels really heavy instead of being helpful. And what I want you to hear today is this. It doesn't mean that you're failing at achieving your goal. What it means is that the goal was never built to support how your body actually functions. One of the problems that I see with health goals, and I see this over and over again, is that goals are often outcome driven instead of process driven. So we focus on the number on the scale, or we focus on our pant size or the energy level that we want, but we skip the behaviors that actually regulate the body. So I'm going to give you an example because right now women's health is kind of at the forefront of medicine and we're seeing it all over social media. So when women are going into perimenopause and they're starting to experience changes in their bodies, we don't necessarily change habits that suit us in this stage of our life. We tend to go back to what worked for us when we were in our early 20s and our 30s, but that no longer works for us over the age of 40. So as we move through different stages in our life and our physiology changes, how we approach these goals need to change with our changing body. So what we see is that when our goals aren't biologically aligned, so when we ignore blood sugar or digestion or stress or daily movement, it's harder to maintain no matter how motivated you are. So alignment changes everything. So when our goals align with physiology rather than against it, we start to see those shifts happen. You don't feel like you're constantly starting over every Monday. You don't rely on willpower alone. Progress starts to feel more steady, less dramatic, and much more sustainable. And it moves you forward. And the best part about alignment, when our goals are in alignment, it doesn't require extremes like we think that we need. It requires instead understanding how your body eats, moves, and processes, and what we give it. So, I'm going to introduce to you what I call the 3 pillars of health. And this is not a diet or a fad, and instead, it's a foundation. So, it's a foundational system that supports exactly how your body functions day to day. So, when I refer to eat, it's about how and what we fuel our bodies with. And then movement is how we use that fuel. And go is all about digestion and elimination. And this is something that we don't talk about enough, but we absolutely should. So we're going to touch upon all 3 of these topics, these pillars of health, and how you can implement them into your ability to reach your goals. And here's the mistake I see most often is that people focus heavily on one pillar and they ignore the rest. So you might focus on just diet or just exercising, but when I see people succeed at their health goals, it's including all 3 of these pillars. So you can eat perfectly, but feel awful if your digestion is off. You can exercise hard, but struggle if you're underfueling. You can take all the supplements you want in the world, but if you're sedentary and stressed out all day, your results are going to stall. So health happens when these systems work together. So let's dive into the first one, which is eat. And when I'm talking about eating, this is not about restriction, it's about regulation. So nutrition. Why is it important? Well, it's important to stabilize our blood sugar. It's important to support satiety and making sure that you get consistent energy throughout the day. If your eating plan leaves you tired, cranky, or constantly hungry, that's really good feedback because it's feedback that what you're doing is not working for your body. And aligned nutrition goals help the body feel safe and supported, and it gives you cues to make adjustments as needed. Um, a lot of well-intentioned people fall into these same similar traps of skipping meals, under eating protein, or chasing calorie numbers without context. And so these are really common nutrition goal mistakes that I see as a registered dietitian. And these approaches often lead to energy crashes, cravings, and eventually burnout. So the body responds better to consistency and nourishment than it does to restriction and pressure. So if you look at diet trends in the past, a lot of the diets will kind of lead us to calorie restriction, and that might have worked really great when we were in our 20s. So if you skipped breakfast or you didn't have lunch and you cut out your certain amount of calories, your body would respond accordingly. But skipping a meal to restrict calories is not the most effective way to lose weight, especially after the age of 40. And when we do this for long periods of time, we actually start to begin to train our body to hold on to calories and burn less. So we teach our bodies to store and hold on to those calories rather than burn and lose weight. So we want to make sure that we're feeding our body enough calories so that it responds appropriately. We need to make sure that we are feeling energized and we have to get that energy from the fuel from our foods. So some of the practical strategies that you can implement, so practical eat goals that work are instead of setting vague goals like, I want to eat better, we need to make sure that we align our goals so that they're simple and repeatable. So what I mean by that is adding protein to every meal improves satiety and blood sugar control. Prioritizing fiber supports digestion and makes you feel fuller for longer periods of time. Now, these are 2 things that you can do repeatedly at every meal, and they're simple. We can easily add protein and fiber to every single meal. Now, the other thing is consistent meal timing. And this helps to reduce overeating through meals, but our body really loves and craves to be on a schedule. So when we add consistency to our goal setting and we are consistently eating similar foods at the same time throughout the day, your body will respond better. So these are not flashy, but they're incredibly effective. And I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about why it's so important to make sure that our meals are consistent with protein, fiber, and healthy fats. So when we consume, let's say you're going to consume a meal, let's say you're going to have lunch. And your lunch is going to be a big sub sandwich. Like we all love a really good sandwich. And you have carbohydrates and you have processed lunch meat and cheese and mayonnaise and maybe whatever else you're putting on there. What's going to happen is your body's going to digest that bread, that sub sandwich pretty quickly. So you're going to get a spike in blood sugar. And then eventually you're going to crash. And what you're going to feel about a half hour to 60 minutes after is a little bit sluggish, a little bit of brain fog. And that is because you're having too much sodium, processed foods, and simple carbohydrates from the bread. Now, on the flip side, if we were to have a lunch that included a salad, so we have mixed greens with some grilled chicken, some avocado, and olive oil with our salad dressing, what we have here is fiber. So our fiber from our salad greens is going to make us feel full. And then we have fat and protein from our animal protein, our chicken. So what happens when we include fiber, protein, and fat is that it digests at different rate. So what that means, instead of having a blood sugar spike from having too much bread, we're going to have a slow integration where our blood sugar slowly increases and then it kind of levels off and then slowly decreases. What that creates is making you feel satisfied in between meals. So if your goal is weight loss or just eating healthy in general, when you feel satisfied in between meals, it means less snacking. And for those of us that tend to have a heavy carbohydrate meal and you kind of feel sluggish, what are you looking for? You're looking for things to pick you back up. So you kind of ride that glucose yo-yo roller coaster where your glucose levels are increasing and then decreasing. So by having these balanced meals, you balance your blood sugar. And here's the important thing when you're setting a nutrition goal. When you understand what the role of each macronutrient is, so macros are carbs, protein, and fat, when you understand the role of those nutrients, and what they do in the body, you can make better choices for your body. So your decisions make sense rather than just choosing a food fad just because that's what the diet told you to do. Now, the next pillar of health is move. So movement isn't just about burning calories. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have for improving insulin sensitivity, managing stress, and preserving muscle mass as we age. Again, after the age of 40, we see a big change in our body compositions, and most people struggle with insulin sensitivity and maintaining lean muscle mass. We start to see a shift in our body composition where there's less muscle mass and more fat mass, especially around the abdomen. And this is related to insulin sensitivity and decreasing lean muscle mass. So it's important to understand that your muscles act like a metabolic organ. They actually help to regulate how your body handles and processes glucose and energy. And here's the good news is that movement counts even when it's not intense or super structured. So we want to gradually increase our intensity, but we can start really simple with just moving, like going for a walk or making sure that we're stretching every day. So the problem we see with people when they're trying to reach a health goal as it relates to exercise is that we go all or nothing, right? We like sign up for the gym and we're just gonna hit the gym hard. And what happens is that many people start to feel stuck because their movement goals are unrealistic. So you start the gym, you're going to go, you're going to hit the cardio, you're going to hit the treadmill and do cardio for like 30 or 45 minutes, and then you're going to lift some weights, and then you're going to go do abs, and you're there for 2 hours, and you're like, I don't have time for this. And what happens is then we have gym guilt, and this will lead to inconsistent routines because it's not aligning with our schedule. And what can happen ultimately is that we create injury and burnout, and then we ditch the gym. Did you all know that January 15th is actually known as Quitter's Day because everybody signs up for the gym for New Year's resolutions, and then by January 15th, everyone's like, I don't have time for this. So if the only movement that counts is a hard workout, it's really easy to feel behind or defeated. One of the things that exercise that I do, I'm going to use me as an example here, is I do 3 different things. I practice yoga, usually in the mornings. I do weight-bearing activities, so weightlifting at the gym in the evenings. And then I have a spin bike. I don't do all of these things every day. But if I am feeling energized and feeling good at the end of my day, I'm going to go have a really good workout at the gym. So that's going to be like a hard workout. But there's days where I'm completely exhausted. I'm stressed out from work. I'm tired. My body's not feeling it. I may jump on my Peloton bike for 15 or 20 minutes. So that's not a all or nothing workout, right? It's not a hard workout, but it still counts because I'm moving. What's really important to understand is that consistency every day, movement every single day, even if it's for 15 minutes, is better than doing one or two workouts a week. And people think if they have a hard workout, then that's good, but it's not consistent. Aligned movement goals fit into real life. They're flexible, they're adaptable, and consistent. They're not all or nothing. So some practical goals, move goals that work are small habits add up. So a short walk after meals improves blood sugar regulation. Daily movement targets will reduce sedentary time. And strength training, even 2 to 3 times per week, supports metabolism and longevity. These habits create momentum instead of guilt. And what I like to have people do is what I call mini goals. So when you're starting exercising, instead of saying, I'm going to hit the gym for an hour every day, that might seem daunting. Or let's say you want to start running and you're like, my goal is to run a half marathon. 13 miles, that's great, but you can't start with 13 miles. So how do we develop that process to get to that end goal? Maybe you start with going for a walk around the block after dinner every day. And that's where you start with. And you do that for 3 to 5 days. And then at the end of 5 days, maybe you do 2 blocks. And then maybe you add a little jog interval. And every single week, you keep progressing and increasing. This is the process of small wins. And by doing these small wins and doing these small micro goals, they add up over time because you're being consistent and they're going to keep you motivated and encouraged to continue that exercise. So start with micro goals, start really small and build up instead of starting really big and then feeling like we failed at meeting our goal. Now, the last pillar of health is the go pillar. And this one is the most overlooked health pillar. And what doesn't come out affects how you feel. So we are talking about pooping, basically. We were talking about digestion and elimination. This is the pillar that most people don't expect, but it matters more than they realize. And this is because digestion and elimination are health signals. Bloating, constipation, irregularity, these are messages from the body. They're not inconveniences. These are messages that you cannot ignore, that something is not right in the body. So when we receive these messages from our body, we need to look at what's going on in our gastrointestinal tract that we're overlooking. If the body isn't processing and eliminating well, everything else becomes harder. So why does this matter so much? Well, our gut and our brain are deeply connected. This is called the gut-brain axis. So when stress is an issue, that's going to affect digestion. Poor digestion affects our energy, our mood, and our hormones. You can be doing everything right, but if digestion is dysregulated, your results will stall. So supporting this pillar improves how the entire system functions. And here's the good news. If you are eating healthy and you're focusing on fiber and protein, and you're moving every single day, the go pillar falls into alignment with your other goals because it'll happen naturally. So some practical goals that work is making sure that you're supporting digestion with food. So let's start with the basics and not necessarily jump right into going into supplements. Supplements are great, but again, let's just start with the basics. So adequate fiber from food, so your fruits and vegetables and whole grains, making sure that you have enough fluids, and then daily movement to support gut motility. We want to make sure that our gut moves. And that's where going for a walk after dinner is a great way to get your gut moving because it's going to gravity's your friend after a meal. And so the food is going to allow to move through the digestive tract at a faster rate. Daily movement supports that gut motility, and it's really important. And a simple morning routine can make a meaningful difference in your day. So we need to focus on those 3 things. So turning these goals into alignment is key. And here is where everything comes together. So instead of setting outcome-only goals, we build behavior-based goals within each of these pillars. When behaviors regulate the body, those outcomes will naturally follow. And oftentimes it happens more easily than we expect. So why should you focus on behavior goals and not just the outcomes? So outcome goals sound motivating. So for example, lose 15 pounds, shrink my waistline, feel energized, but they don't tell you what your body needs to do today. But behavior-based goals do. So behavior-based goals focus on daily actions that you can control, which is what creates consistency and confidence over time. And then those outcomes follow behaviors, not the other way around. So let me give you examples on how you can use each of these pillars and create these goals so that you meet your big end-term goal, whether it be weight loss, improved sleep, better performance in the gym, or just reducing your stress levels throughout the day. So if we're focusing on the eat pillar, we're going to focus on nourishment, blood sugar stability, and muscle support. So let me give you an example. Including a protein source at every meal is one way. It's repeatable and it's simple. And this works because it helps to stabilize blood sugar, it supports your lean muscle mass, and naturally reduces overeating without having to track or restrict calories. Another example could be building a balanced plate. So making sure that you have protein, fat, and fiber in every single meal. And this works because it shifts the focus from what should I avoid eating to how do I assemble a meal that is healthy and is actually going to make me feel satisfied, especially if you struggle with having cravings and energy dips throughout the day. So a lot of times we're like, oh, I can't eat this. Shift your focus and instead say, this is what I am going to include in my diet. And then we work about eliminating those other foods later on. But let's just first by adding that protein and fiber. Now, when we focus on the move, whoops, I went the wrong way. The move pillar, we're going to focus on consistency, strength training, and circulation, not calorie burn. So don't worry about how many calories you're burning. Just make sure that you're moving every day. And if you're new at a movement goal, start with just 10 to 20 minutes, at least 5 days per week. This works because consistency matters more than intensity. This is going to support your insulin sensitivity, right? So again, if you're gaining weight in the midsection, that's called visceral fat accumulation. That's metabolically active. This increases inflammation and increases the risk of heart disease and type 2 diabetes. And so we want to reduce insulin sensitivity. So eating protein, fiber, and exercising helps to target that specifically. It also helps with joint health and stress regulation. When we're focusing on the GO pillar, we're going to focus on digestion, elimination, and recovery. And this can also help with stress regulation. So we're going to make sure that we are consuming 25 to 35 grams of fiber every single day from whole foods. So here's a really great way that you know if you're meeting your fiber goals. I want you to consume 30 plant-based foods per week. So that might sound like a lot, but let's break it down. So at breakfast, let's say you have a bowl of oatmeal, that's one. And in that oatmeal, you're going to add some blueberries, some flax seeds, and some slivered almonds. That's 4 things right there. At lunch, you're going to have a big salad. So we got leafy greens, and then we're going to add avocado and artichokes and tomatoes and some pumpkin seeds and olive oil. We have 10 things right there, plant-based foods that contain fiber, and we're only at the second meal of day 1. So create a chart. You remember when we were younger and we would go to school and they had the poster boards, and if we did good or we did I don't know, we either did our chores at home or we did something good at school, you would get a gold star. Do that every time you eat a plant-based food. Create a checklist and make sure that at the end of the week, you have 30 different plant-based foods in your diet. And that's a fantastic way to make sure you're getting at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. And this works because fiber supports your gut health, makes you feel fuller longer. It helps to make sure that your bowels are regular. And these are key for metabolic health. These are the foundations for making sure that you are having good, healthy metabolic health. So with any goal setting, we're going to shift from saying, I want to lose weight. That's a big goal. That's a fantastic goal. But when we break it down to each of those pillars of health, and we look at what can we focus, what is the process within each pillar to get us to lose weight. We can focus on protein and fiber at meals for the eat goal, daily movement and strength training for our movement goal, and making sure that we stay hydrated and doing the eat and the move goal in order to regulate digestion and elimination. So all of these things work together in a harmonious way. So one of the key takeaways I want you to understand with anything related to health and wellness, I'm going to tell you a story about a patient of mine, but at first I want to talk to you about something called compounding interest. So Albert Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. So he said that he who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So let me repeat that. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And he wasn't just talking about money. He's talking about everything: health, habits, relationships, and success. I had a client named Rachel, and when she came to me, she said that I can never stick with anything for more than 3 weeks. So I asked her, can you stick with it for 1 week? Not perfectly, I just want you to stay in the game. And she did. So she added more protein and fiber to her meals. She moved her body 4 days a week, and she made water her new best friend. After 2 weeks, she said, okay, this is working. I can handle this. After 3 weeks, she felt better in her jeans. After 6 weeks, her doctor was able to remove some of her medications. By the 3rd month, she was finally sleeping through the night, which is something she had not done in a really long time. So what did she do different? She started with small actions done consistently over time. That is the secret. And here's the thing, most people quit because they expect instant transformation. They want spaghetti squash to taste like fettuccine Alfredo by Tuesday, and they want abs by Friday. The truth is, what you do today may not pay off until December or next year, but if you stay in the game, it will pay off. So when we talk about time, it seems basic, and we all know there's 24 hours in a day, but most of us forget that time, when paired with consistent action, becomes one of the most powerful tools we have in creating real change, especially when it comes to our health. And here's the thing, at first, the habits you're building might feel like they're doing nothing at all, but you start eating more protein, you're moving your body daily, you're going to bed earlier. And after a week or two, you might look in the mirror and say, nothing's happening. But what you don't see are how those actions are compounding and building layer by layer under the surface. I see it all the time. People start strong, but when the scale doesn't budge in 2 weeks or their jeans still feel snug after a couple weeks, they throw in the towel and go, that's not working. I have to try something differently. But what we're forgetting is that progress doesn't always look dramatic. And most of the time, it's subtle. It builds in the background while life is happening. And here's the thing that gets trickier. Your memory can affect how you connect those dots. So you forget how great you feel the week you actually planned your meals, or you forget how good you felt when you had water throughout the day instead of coffee and your headaches disappeared. So when the results do finally show up, you have more energy, you're feeling better, your skin is clearer, it feels random, like it came out of nowhere, but it didn't. It's cause and effect. It's the direct result of you doing those small things consistently over time, maybe weeks, months, or a year or two. And this is why people give up too soon, because they don't realize their current results or struggles are the ripple effect of what they're doing or not doing consistently over time. And every time you change the direction, because you don't see that instant gratification or instant results, whether it's your meal plan, your workout routine, or your mindset, you're resetting the clock. So don't chase that shiny object if you don't see immediate results. Sit with it, because it will come. Real change doesn't come from trying everything for 30 days. It comes from doing it right 365 days. So if it feels like nothing's happening yet, just keep going. The results don't always show up when you want them to, but they will show up if you stay consistent. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. When your goals work with your body instead of against it, progress feels different. You'll feel calmer, more sustainable, more human. So I want to thank you today for spending time with me, and I'm looking forward to your questions and hearing what resonated with you most. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Tammy. So before we dive into Q&A, I'd like to ask you all to please take a moment and fill out the survey. We appreciate your feedback. So I'm going to put that in the chat really quickly, and you all can start thinking about your questions. I have a question, Tammy.
Yes.
So I'm a vitamins person, and I'm starting to take vitamins that I haven't taken before, and I take a one a day. And I wonder if you could talk about the importance of knowing how much of a certain supplement you should be taking.
That's a great question. So, supplements are just that. They're going to supplement your diet. So, one of the first things I always recommend is focusing on a diet. So, exactly what I was talking about today, having 30 different plant-based foods, making sure you're getting enough protein in your diet. If you're doing that, you're getting most of your nutrients. A daily vitamin is fantastic. I always recommend an essential fatty acid. I always recommend calcium and vitamin D. Um, but they should supplement the diet. They shouldn't be in place of a healthy diet. So keep taking those vitamins. You can take them for as long as you need to, unless you're taking a specific vitamin for a purpose. Like, for example, we can take niacin when our cholesterol is high. You would use that as a treatment phase. But if it's a daily multivitamin or calcium, those are just going to help supplement what could possibly be missing from the diet. But let's first focus on the diet.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share with you, can I share the QR code now? Is that okay? Okay. So I do have a QR code for you with a guide. Oops, let me get back here. Okay. So this QR code goes to a guide that I call the Core Confidence Challenge. It's a 21-day guide that incorporates the Eat, Move, Go principles. So the pillars of health are incorporated. You don't have to follow the 21-day guide. You can actually just dive deeper into those 3 pillars of health. But if you do want a more structured program to get you started with achieving your health and wellness goals or just getting healthy, this is a free guide for you to go ahead and download. And then I included also my contact information on social media, email, and then also my website. And also for women over 40, I am doing a year-long program called the Reset Routine, where we do also incorporate this 3 pillars of health, but it is a year-long program where I guide you and support you throughout the entire year. So you make those important changes, but then anytime we need to modify your plan or kind of tweak things so that you're staying on track, or when life happens, like the holidays or in-laws come to visit, you come on in for a weekly live Q&A. We can make sure that you're staying on track with your health and wellness goals. So I'll leave that up here. And then are there any other questions?
I'm just going to chime in. Thank you so much. That was incredibly educational. I love the idea of being process driven rather than outcome driven. I find with the community members that I work with, people are often so attached to that outcome. Kind of the outcome is equivalent to like the trophy at the end, right? And it's like all about the process and the journey and the behaviors that we make or break during that time rather than what that final outcome is. I did receive a question, a direct question about for a person that might be stuck, right, having trouble getting started on their own personal journey. Is there one of your Eat, Move, Go pillars that you find is like the best place to start?
I always start with eating. I think that's probably something that we can integrate easily. We're eating 3 times a day, so we can definitely start focusing on meals first and then integrating movement thereafter. And I always say the things that we are most reluctant to do are the things that we need most. So for some people, like if movement is like the thing that you hate the most, maybe just start there because it's probably what your body's craving the most. We just don't realize it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you recommend testosterone therapy for women over 50?
I do actually. Yeah, there's quite a lot of research, and I think we're at a really interesting time in health right now where hormone replacement therapy is a huge conversation, but doctors are learning how to prescribe this because they stopped prescribing it for so many years. And right now, testosterone therapy is on the label for men to use only. So it's off label for women, but we are seeing so many benefits for women as it relates to brain fog and sleeping and maintaining lean muscle mass because we do lose lean muscle mass, especially over the age of 40. Um, for sexual health as well. So I say get your blood tested, making sure that your testosterone levels are high and be followed by a doctor, but women are seeing great results with it.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you phrased your comments towards women over 40. How do they change when you're looking at women over 60 or 70 or 80?
They're about the same. So, what we're seeing most recently in the research is how we metabolize protein. So, we could eat like 60 grams of protein when we're in our 20s and early 30s, and we'd be able to synthesize it very well. But we're starting to see that we synthesize less protein over the age of 40. And I'm assuming as we get older, we're not synthesizing as well. So, what the research right now is saying is that we need to make sure we're eating more protein. And we're seeing shifts in dietary guidelines where they're saying protein at each meal. So, we're in a really, I feel like we're in this new learning phase about nutrients in life stages. In the past, the dietary guidelines kind of lumped everybody in a one size fits all category. And now we're really looking at the life stages. So, it's really important to be in tune with how you feel. Um, make sure you're getting blood work done so you know if there's any deficiencies in the body, in the blood work, things that you need to work on. But protein is so important as we get older with each stage. So focusing on protein intake from animal and plant-based sources, but also making sure we're getting healthy fats as well to protect our arteries and making sure our joints are lubricated so we can keep moving and also helping with hormone production.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tammy, if you don't mind, I just want to kind of respond to the previous question also, or make a comment. And I think this is really important to note is that, as you said, so much of this research is fairly newly released, right?
Yeah.
And so there's been all of this conversation around like the 40 plus. But to the previous guest's question about what about for women 60 or older or 80 or older, I think the thing to keep in mind that's really important is that the things that we're talking about, like prioritizing protein and the importance of resistance training for, bone health, just because you might not have been doing it for the previous 20 years and you're 60 or 70, right? It does not mean that it's too late.
Yeah.
It's really important that you understand that the research that we have now is still applicable even at that older age, and that you can slow down the process and progress of some of those degenerative conditions by instituting healthier nutritional guidelines, like prioritizing the protein and adding in weight training, even, as late as your 70s or 80s.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for adding that. I did a presentation with a gentleman. His name is Dan John, and he's a famous coach. And he worked with a lot of Olympic athletes and as well as college athletes. And he is now in his 70s. And so he's focusing on senior movement. And he made a comment. He said the most dangerous place for an older person to be is on the floor. Because if you can't get up, this is where things start to really spiral. And so he has focused a lot of his guidelines and training for people over 55 and getting into the gym and starting, even if they never exercise, like it's never too late to start because you want to be able to have that strength that God forbid you end up on the floor, you can get back up. And so when we do approach those golden years, we're able to move with ease and transition through that life stage. So that's a great message to say it's never too late. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, Tammy. We appreciate you joining us today. We are just about out of time. I'd like to thank you all for being here, particularly to Dr. Fogarty. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We hope that you have gained valuable tools and insight to align your health, habits,